Meet Frank Abagnale, a man who has been called the world's greatest con artist. Between 1969 and 1980, he successfully impersonated a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer, among other professions, earning millions of dollars in the process. But what's most astonishing is that he was able to pull off these elaborate deceptions while serving time in prison for the very same crimes. Abagnale's exploits have been immortalized in the film Catch Me If You Can, but the real story is far more complex. Abagnale's con artistry was not just about the money, it was about the thrill of the chase, the rush of adrenaline as he evaded capture. He was a master manipulator, using his charm and charisma to win over his marks, often with devastating consequences. His victims included a Boeing executive, a lawyer for the U.S. Treasury, and even a French police officer. But what drives a person like Frank Abagnale to engage in such behavior? Experts say it's a combination of factors, including a need for control, a lack of empathy, and a deep-seated insecurity. Abagnale himself has said that he was motivated by a desire to be loved and accepted, but also to prove himself as a superior being. His actions were a desperate attempt to fill the void left by his troubled childhood and his struggles in school. As we delve into the psychology behind con artists like Abagnale, we'll examine the warning signs, the tactics they use, and the psychological motivations that drive them to deceive and manipulate others. We'll meet other notorious con artists, including Charles Ponzi, who swindled millions with his infamous investment scheme, and Bernie Madoff, who ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, bilking investors out of billions. But the question remains, what makes a person like Frank Abagnale, a man who has spent his entire life deceiving and manipulating others, yet still manages to elicit our sympathy and fascination? Is it a combination of his charisma, intelligence, and good looks, or is it something more? As we explore the mind of the con artist, we may just uncover some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Throughout history, con artists have walked among us, preying on the vulnerable and unsuspecting, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. From the 18th century confidence tricksters of the British East End to the high-tech scammers of modern times, one thing remains constant: the ability to manipulate and deceive. Take the case of Frank Abagnale Jr., a charismatic con artist who impersonated a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer, swindling millions before being caught in the late 1960s. Abagnale's exploits have been well documented, with estimates suggesting he cashed over $2.5 million in bad checks before being brought to justice. But Abagnale's story is not an isolated incident. In the United States alone, it's estimated that over $30 billion is lost annually to con artists and scammers. These individuals often target the elderly, the young, and those who are financially vulnerable, using tactics that range from the clever to the cruel. One of the most fascinating aspects of con artistry is its ability to tap into human psychology. Con artists are experts in reading body language, identifying emotional triggers, and manipulating the human desire for connection and trust. They use psychological tactics such as gaslighting, grooming, and emotional manipulation to build relationships with their victims, often gaining their trust before making their move. The most successful con artists are those who can convincingly assume a persona, often using stolen identities, fake credentials, or elaborate backstories to build credibility. This is where the psychology of deception comes into play, as con artists use a combination of charm, charisma, and psychological manipulation to get what they want. As we delve into the world of con artists, we'll explore the complex psychological dynamics at play, examining the tactics and techniques used by some of history's most notorious scammers. We'll also investigate the aftermath of their crimes, exploring the devastating impact on their victims and the wider community. As we delve deeper into the mind of a con artist, it becomes clear that their success relies heavily on a combination of charm, charisma, and calculated psychological manipulation. One of the most notable examples of this is the case of Charles Ponzi, who in the 1920s, duped thousands of investors out of millions of dollars with his promise of unusually high returns on investments in international reply coupons. What's fascinating is that Ponzi's scheme was remarkably simple, yet incredibly effective. He would promise investors a 50% return on their investment in just 45 days, and would often pay out early returns to make his scheme appear legitimate. But behind the scenes, he was using the money from new investors to pay off earlier investors, all while lining his own pockets with the profits. The key to Ponzi's success lay in his ability to build a sense of trust with his victims. He would often use his charm and charisma to make them feel like they were part of a special club, and would often go out of his way to make them feel important and valued. This is a classic tactic used by con artists, who often use flattery and false affection to gain the trust of their victims. But Ponzi's scheme was eventually exposed, and he was arrested and charged with securities fraud. But what's remarkable is that even in the face of overwhelming evidence, many of his victims continued to defend him, and even continue to do so to this day. This is a testament to the incredible power of psychological manipulation, and the ways in which con artists can use it to insinuate themselves into the lives of their victims. The psychology behind con artists is a complex and multifaceted one, but it's clear that at its core, it's about building trust and manipulating emotions. By using a combination of charm, charisma, and psychological manipulation, con artists can create a web of deceit that's incredibly difficult to escape. The con artist's psyche is a fascinating, yet disturbing, phenomenon that has captivated researchers and the public alike. To truly understand the driving forces behind these individuals, we must delve into the psychological underpinnings of their behavior. One key aspect is the concept of Machiavellianism, a personality trait characterized by a lack of empathy, manipulativeness, and a willingness to exploit others. Individuals with high levels of Machiavellianism tend to be more successful in their deceitful endeavors, as they are better equipped to read social cues and manipulate others to achieve their goals. The case of Charles Ponzi, a notorious con artist from the early 20th century, is a prime example of this phenomenon. Ponzi's scheme, which promised investors unusually high returns on their investments in international reply coupons, was a masterclass in manipulation. He used a combination of charisma, charm, and emotional appeals to convince his victims to invest, often targeting vulnerable individuals who were desperate for financial security. Ponzi's scheme ultimately collapsed, but not before he had swindled millions of dollars from his victims. Research suggests that individuals with antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, are more likely to engage in con artist behavior. Studies have shown that individuals with ASPD tend to exhibit a lack of empathy, impulsivity, and a history of deceitful behavior. While not all individuals with ASPD become con artists, the condition is often comorbid with other personality disorders that contribute to a predisposition for deceitful behavior. The real-world implications of con artist behavior are staggering. According to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, Americans lost an estimated $1.3 billion to romance scams alone in 2020. The total loss due to all types of scams, including investment scams, phishing, and identity theft, is likely in the tens of billions of dollars annually. Understanding the psychology behind con artist behavior is crucial in developing effective prevention and intervention strategies to combat these crimes. As we delve deeper into the world of con artists, a turning point emerges that highlights the depths of their psychological manipulation. Charles Ponzi, the namesake of the infamous Ponzi scheme, is a prime example. In the early 20th century, Ponzi promised his investors a staggering 50% return on investment in just 90 days, a promise that seemed too good to be true. And it was. But what's striking is that Ponzi didn't just stop at making outlandish promises. He went to great lengths to build a rapport with his victims, often showering them with attention and flattery. He would often host lavish parties and events, where he would mingle with his investors, making them feel like they were part of an exclusive club. This was a classic tactic of gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation where the con artist makes the victim question their own perceptions and sanity. Ponzi's scheme was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. He would often use high-pressure sales tactics, creating a sense of urgency and scarcity to get his victims to invest quickly. He would also use his charisma and charm to build a sense of trust with his victims, making them feel like they were in good hands. But beneath the surface, Ponzi was using